If you've ever looked at your glucose meter after eating and thought, how is this possible? I'm trying so hard. I'm cutting carb. I'm eating less. I'm doing everything right, and my numbers still look worse. This video is for you because here's what nobody told you. A lot of people with diabetes have been taught to fear the very foods that can help them heal. They've been told fruit is dangerous. Beans are too starchy. Potatoes are the enemy. But that story leaves out the actual physiology. And when you understand the physiology, this gets a whole lot less scary. High blood sugar has a root cause, and that root cause has three parts happening at once. First, glucose is sitting in your bloodstream because your muscle cells aren't pulling it in efficiently. Second, your liver is dumping extra glucose, even when you don't need it, because insulin resistance is telling it the wrong story. Third, the intracellular environment inside your muscle and liver cells is congested with excess fat, and that fat is what's jamming the signal in the first place. Most people only ever hear about the first two. Nobody talks about the third, and that's exactly what this video is going to fix. In this video, I'm going to walk through 20 foods to eat often to reverse diabetes. Not because they magically erase blood sugar, not because they cancel out carbs, but because they improve insulin sensitivity, lower the fat burden inside muscle and liver cells, increase fiber intake, support gut health, and help your body do what it was designed to do. Move glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells where it belongs. If you want our free guide to put this into action with meal plans, recipes, and a step-by-step strategy, comment guide below. You'll see real case studies from people who restored insulin sensitivity and transformed their numbers. Completely free, comment guide below. Let's quickly dive into what's actually going on inside your cells. Before we talk about any specific food, you need to understand one thing. Think of insulin as a key. Your muscle and liver cells are the locks. When those cells are clean and healthy, the key turns easily. Glucose flows in, gets used for energy, and your blood sugar comes right back down. But when excess fat builds up inside those cells, especially intramyocellular fat in muscle and excess fat in the liver, the lock gets jammed. Insulin shows up, it tries to turn the key, the signal doesn't go through. So glucose stays stuck in the bloodstream longer than it should. That's insulin resistance. And carbohydrates don't cause it, they just reveal it. The foods you're about to learn don't work by avoiding glucose. They work by cleaning the lock, reducing the fat congestion inside cells so insulin can finally do its job again. That's the mechanism. Keep it in mind as we go through this list. Foods 1, 2, and 3. The sprout trio. Broccoli sprouts, lentil sprouts, and mung bean sprouts. Start here because most people have never heard of using sprouts as a metabolic tool, and that's a mistake. Broccoli sprouts are especially rich in sulforaphane precursors, compounds that have been studied for their direct effects on oxidative stress, inflammation, and glucose regulation. Here's the science. A randomized, double-blind clinical trial assigned 81 people with type 2 diabetes to either 10 grams per day of broccoli sprout powder, 5 grams per day, or placebo for 4 weeks. The higher dose group saw significant reductions in both serum insulin and HOMA-IR, a direct measure of insulin resistance. Lower fasting insulin and lower HOMA-IR mean the body is responding to insulin more efficiently, not just forcing out more of it. That's a fundamentally different outcome, and it points straight at the root cause. Now, here's the part most people miss. Lentil sprouts and mung bean sprouts belong in the same family. Sprouting changes the food matrix, improves digestibility, and enhances certain bioactive compounds. These foods deliver carbohydrate with fiber, plant protein, and minerals in a package that produces a far gentler glucose curve than people expect. They don't ask your pancreas to perform acrobatics. They support steady glucose delivery while simultaneously feeding a healthier gut microbiome. Add them to your salads, top your bowls with them, eat them daily. Foods 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the bitter and cruciferous crew. Cauliflower, radishes, collard greens, turnip greens, and turnips. These 5 foods do something that rarely gets talked about, and they might be the most important thing on this entire list. They displace the foods that cause insulin resistance in the first place. When you fill your plate with cauliflower, radishes, collard greens, turnip greens, and turnips, you're crowding out the high saturated fat foods that clog the lock. You're replacing calorie density with micronutrients, fiber, potassium, and water. water. The research supports this directly. A prospective study in children with a family history of obesity found that lowering saturated fat and increasing fruit and vegetable intake was associated with significantly better insulin sensitivity 2 years later. Every additional serving of fruits and vegetables was linked with improvements in insulin sensitivity, while saturated fat moved things in the wrong direction. Different population, yes, but the physiology is identical. Saturated fat impairs insulin action by accumulating inside muscle and liver cells, jamming the lock. Fiber-rich, low-fat plant foods do the opposite. They reduce the incoming fat load while improving the cellular environment where insulin signaling has to happen. That's how the lock starts to unstick. Collard greens and turnip greens also happen to be among the most mineral-dense foods on the planet, packed with calcium, magnesium, and vitamin K. Cauliflower is endlessly versatile and pairs with almost any meal. Radishes and turnips add crunch, volume, and variety without adding a single gram of the fat that makes things worse. Build your meals around these, not occasionally, often. Foods 9 and 10 are the legume anchors, lentils and black beans. This is where a lot of people get nervous, and I want to address that head on. Yes, lentils and black beans contain carbohydrate. They also contain fiber, resistant starch, minerals, and plant protein in a package that consistently produces better glycemic control, not worse. A review on high fiber diets in type 2 diabetes concluded that increased consumption of vegetables, whole grains, and both soluble and insoluble fiber is associated with improved glucose metabolism in people with and without diabetes. That is not a low carb message. It's a fiber message, a food structure message, a gut health and insulin sensitivity message. And an older but comprehensive review made a critical distinction that still holds today. Isolated fiber supplements produced mixed results, but diets built around naturally fiber-rich whole plant foods consistently supported better glucose control and lipid metabolism. Here's what that tells us. You can't bolt fiber onto a diet that's otherwise driving insulin resistance and expect magic. But when the diet itself is centered on high carbohydrate, high fiber, whole plant foods, the physiology changes. The gut microbiome shifts. Short-chain fatty acids are produced, insulin signaling improves, fasting glucose trends down. So, if you've been afraid of lentils and black beans, I want you to see them differently. Think of them as slow-release glucose with metabolic scaffolding attached. They bring their own breaks. They bring their own cleanup crew. Make them the anchor of your lunch and dinner every single day. Foods 11, 12, 13, and 14 are the supporting cast: okra, celery, tomatoes, and peppers. If the legumes are the anchor, these four are the crew that makes the whole ship run. Okra's soluble fiber and mucilage slow digestion and absorption, acting almost like a natural buffer between food and bloodstream. Celery is hydrating, mineral-rich, and one of the best high-volume, zero-fat burden foods you can eat. Tomatoes and peppers bring vitamin C, carotenoids, and polyphenols that support endothelial function, reduce inflammation, and improve the vascular environment that glucose transport depends on. But here's the deeper function of these foods that most people miss. They make your meals larger, more satisfying, and dramatically less calorie dense. That's not a cosmetic benefit. It directly reduces the excess energy load that drives fat storage in the liver and muscle, the very fat that jams the insulin lock. Volume matters. Satiety matters. Displacing fat-dense foods matters. Build every lunch and dinner around these four alongside your legumes, and you're creating a metabolic environment your cells will respond to very differently than they do right now. Foods 15, 16, 17, and 18 are the fantastic fruit quartet: oranges, apples, mangoes, and papaya. Here's where I want to challenge something you've probably been told. Fruit is not the problem, and the research is very clear on this. Researchers analyzed data from 7,675 adults and examined whole fruit intake in relation to glucose tolerance, insulin sensitivity, and diabetes risk. Total whole fruit intake was associated with better insulin sensitivity. People with moderate fruit intake had 36% lower odds of having diabetes at 5 years compared to those eating the least fruit. Fruit juice did not show the same benefit. That last part is the key. Whole fruit behaves differently than juice because the package matters. Whole fruit arrives with fiber, water, chewing resistance, cell walls, and polyphenols. Juice strips most of that away and delivers sugar fast with almost no satiety. Oranges bring vitamin C, water, and a fiber-rich architecture that slows glucose delivery. Apples are rich in pectin and polyphenols, one of the best examples of a food people fear for no good reason. Mangoes and papaya get demonized consistently because they're tropical and taste sweet. But when When you're eating them whole, in the context of a low-fat, fiber-rich diet that's improving insulin sensitivity, they can absolutely be part of reversal. And here's the reframe I want you to hold on to. A blood sugar spike after fruit does not prove that fruit caused your diabetes. It proves that carbohydrate tolerance is impaired. That is a completely different statement. When insulin sensitivity improves, those same fruits often produce a dramatically more stable response. We see this all the time with real people. Go read the case studies at masteringdiabetes.org. People who were once terrified of mangoes and oranges are now eating them with confidence because they fixed the root cause. If you want help doing the same thing, comment guide below. We'll send you our free guide with the exact food strategy to start restoring insulin sensitivity now. Comment guide below. Foods 19 and 20, the berry finish. Blueberries and raspberries. End with these because they're easy to underestimate and they punch well above their weight. Blueberries bring one of the strongest polyphenol profiles of any food on the list. Their anthocyanins directly improve how cells respond to insulin, reduce oxidative stress, and lower the inflammatory signals that make insulin resistance worse. Research on 7,675 adults, the same cohort mentioned previously, showed that berry intake in particular was associated with reduced diabetes risk, consistent with multiple other large population studies showing berries as one of the most protective fruits you can eat. Raspberries pack a remarkable amount of fiber into a small serving, more fiber per calorie than almost any other fruit. That means slower glucose absorption, better gut fermentation, more short-chain fatty acid production, and more consistent insulin signaling downstream. Eat them fresh, eat them frozen, eat them every day. How to actually use these 20 foods. Now, here's the part most people skip, and it's what separates people who understand this from people who actually feel it. After breakfast, think light, bright, and fiber-rich. A smoothie bowl with mango, papaya, blueberries, and raspberries, or a fruit plate with apples and oranges alongside a low-fat, starch-centered meal. Then take a 10-minute walk, not to burn off your breakfast, but because muscle contraction pulls glucose out of the bloodstream through an insulin-independent pathway, opening a side door that works even when insulin is struggling. For lunch, make legumes the anchor. Lentils or black beans with collard greens, tomatoes, peppers, celery, and cauliflower. Add radishes or turnips for crunch and volume. Top with lentil sprouts or mung bean sprouts for an extra metabolic layer. That meal gives you fiber, minerals, slow-release glucose, and gut-feeding resistant starch without the saturated fat that makes insulin resistance worse. Dinner is especially important because what you eat at night influences your overnight glucose and your fasting number the next morning. Keep dinner centered on whole plant foods. Keep overt fat low, load up on non-starchy vegetables plus legumes or intact starches. A bowl of black beans, turnip greens, peppers, tomatoes, celery, and cauliflower, followed by a piece of fruit, can work beautifully. Then move. A walk after dinner is one of the best times to use contraction-mediated glucose uptake because you're clearing circulating glucose before the long overnight stretch. Here's the big picture. Let's zoom out because the most powerful message here is bigger than any single food. Broccoli sprouts reduce fasting insulin and HOMA-IR by targeting oxidative stress and glucose regulation at the cellular level. Cruciferous and bitter vegetables displace saturated fat, increase fiber, and directly improve the intracellular environment where insulin signaling has to happen. Lentils and black beans deliver fiber and resistant starch in a package that consistently improves glucose metabolism and feeds the gut microbiome. Okra, celery, tomatoes, and peppers increase meal volume, reduce calorie density, and support the vascular and metabolic environment glucose transport depends on. Whole fruits, especially oranges, apples, mangoes, papaya, blueberries, and raspberries, improve insulin sensitivity, reduce diabetes risk, and behave completely differently than juice because the food structure is intact. None of these foods work by hacking blood sugar. They work by removing the reasons it's high. And this is where food stops feeling like the enemy and starts feeling like the lever. If you're sitting there thinking, I want to believe this, but I've been burned before, I get it. Your skepticism makes sense. But skepticism should push you toward physiology, not toward fear. The physiology says whole food carbohydrates do not create diabetes. Insulin resistance does. Fiber helps, saturated fat hurts. Muscle contraction helps. And when you consistently remove what clogs the system and add what restores it, change becomes possible. Comment guide below if you want the free guide. Let the evidence calm the chaos. Let the physiology replace the fear. And start eating these foods often enough that your body finally gets the message. If this video helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and and share it with someone who's been told to avoid carbs to lower their blood sugar. Until next time, keep those carbs high and that A1C low.